Welcome in, everybody. We're going into round 3 of my first ever classical chess tournament. And here I was playing a super nice older gentleman. And literally, the end of this game, he told me, I'm too old for this. So let's see what unfolded here. We get another e4 game. So of course, I'm going to play the Caro Kann again, because I'm boring, but that's okay. But this time we get an advanced variation, and I play c5. And I kid you not, guys and gals, I think that my opponent spent a solid, 8 minutes thinking about what to play here. Like, everyone else was, 10, 12 moves into their game, and my opponent was trying to figure out what to do at this moment. and then he just decides to play c3, which is okay, could have been fine. It was a bit too advanced for them, you might say, as Fiog says in the comments there. Knight c6, very common, putting more pressure on the pawn here. And then f4, I was not happy to see. I know the engine's like, oh, it's fine, whatever. But to be honest, for whatever reason, maybe this is not true, but if I looked at my chess.com results and statistics, I'm pretty sure I get wrecked versus f4 for some reason. Maybe in blitz games I get wrecked, but OTB, different story. I don't know. But basically, it's always a question: do I put the bishop here, or in this case, I was like, you know what? I'll take a page out of woman grandmaster Dina Belenkaya's book. I saw her play a6 in one of these lines, basically as a waiting move, and I was like, look, instead of putting my bishop on f5, which I'm not really used to, I'll just play a6, because guess what? More than likely, knight to f3 will be the next move. And that is exactly what happened. Beautiful work here. Now I can finally pin just like I'm used to, and I can always capture and just put everything on light squares. I know that's you might be wondering okay, you're just talking nonsense, but hey, it makes a big difference. If you're used to playing a lot of variations where your bishop's on g4, then anything to pass the tempo back so you can do that before you play e6 makes a lot of sense. And I was happy to see this. I play e6. Now I can literally trade off whenever I want to, and we're good to go. All right. I bring my knight over, knight b to d2. I bring my knight forward, and look at this, chat. We are getting plenty of pressure on the d4 pawn. This is very common in a lot of the c5, or this is just common in Caro Kann lines, but especially after c5 and c takes d4, there's no c pawn to support it, and the e pawn's already further advanced. So the idea is that a lot of times you just take the knight, and after it takes with the bishop, you're good to go. But in this case, we have knight b to d2, so they can just take back with the knight. But that's why after knight b3, I was like, okay, this is becoming much more of a reality. But unfortunately, we still have 2 attackers, and now the knight on b3 is actually defending as well. So you have 3 defenders. You can remove 1, but still 2 defenders versus 2 attackers is not enough. So I played queen b6, which is also another motif, depending on the line. You play queen b6, and sometimes this knight's not here, so if they play here, you can always just take the b2 pawn. And, it's at the 1400 chess.com level and below, you'll probably see that more often. I don't see it much anymore now that I'm in the upper 1500s. But anyway, yes, this is so I'm pretty happy here. King moves out. I think they got really scared because they're like, oh, this pawn is pinned, we're gonna take here, but guess what, you have an f pawn. I don't know why king h1 was necessary. Chad's saying that this looks like an awesome French with the bishop on g4. Yes, we love not having a French bishop. Anyway, rook c8, also a very common move. You utilize the open file, so if the position transforms, hey, you got first dibs on the open file. And all right, my opponent is playing music in my ears. Whatever that idiom is. Is it speaking music to my ears? I have no idea. But basically, they play h3, which encourages me to execute my plan, which was takes, and after you take, 1, 2, 3 versus 1, 2. Now we are good to go. And I was thinking, okay, which knight do I take with? Well, of course, we take with the c knight, because the issue is if you take with this knight, danger zone. Danger zone, okay? You don't want to walk into pins like that. You don't want to walk into pins like that, okay? So make sure you have your pin near you. You're always thinking about it. That way you don't blunder like this. Instead, I took with the C Knight, and after it takes, I was like, all right, I can either take and walk right into this pin, or why don't we just go, boop, takes, takes, takes. Another option here, chat. Guess what? I missed it, but it's okay. Another option is Knight G3. You grab the fork, and you're good to go. King G1, and this is pinned, so apparently you don't take. Yeah, it's a little more confusing. So you do this because everything's under attack. Patiently. Patient move. Rook C4. I didn't see this. I just went, immediately took, and I was like, all right, we're good to go. I moved back, and little did I know. Yeah, my opponent would see the fork this time. What's funny is, like, after I played Knight takes D4, I was like, oh, I could have forked here, like, at some point in that earlier variation. Which I didn't see, like, Rook C4. I hadn't, like, fully calculated. I just noticed that the fork existed. So that's why I went back after all this. But yeah, I mean, either way, the knight on F5, it's great, right? I can't complain. And now I develop my bishop. And, chat, this was, like, one of my favorite games to play for the rest of this. Like, this was my favorite game of the tournament just because I just had an advantage, like, the whole time. And my opponent was just working so hard to figure out a way to not lose, and I'm up a pawn and it's a passed pawn, so it's like you prove how you're gonna stop this, right? I was living the dream. I was like, yeah, every move is a good move here. Yeah, so bishop comes out. I'm like, no, if you take, I'm gonna keep my pawn structure, central pawn structure in place. My opponent goes for b4. Not very, but it's a little bit tricky because if takes, then rook comes through, and all of a sudden, wherever I go, yeah, like, I'm dropping the pawn. And sure, I can try and go here, but then a3 comes, and it's like, okay, like, I'm still dropping the pawn with check. So, not ideal. So instead, I just don't fall for it. I play bishop d4, hitting the rook. The rook moves. I jump knight forward, and they go forward. And I'm like, look, worst case takes. We're quite happy. Another issue, I was like, why would I open up the B file? No go for me. He takes. I'm like, all right, we're good to go. Check. I go back, and I bring the king forward to try and, like, take this pawn. But now he takes my bishop, so I'm like, okay, whatever. He doubles up. It's fine. We're good. We double up, right? Everybody doubles up. And here I was like, all right, king e7, and this king is doing nothing productive, and we're all good to go. G4, take. All right. Now I was trying to figure out, how do I actually convert this? At some point, I just push, right? But I wasn't exactly sure when to push, and I was always a little bit scared of, like, oh, like, if I ever am not careful enough, then this pawn can't be supported by the e-pawn anymore. It's all ghost, right? Like, you can't be scared of ghost, chat. But anyway, I trade off a rook, and then here, I realized things are a little tricky, okay? It's a little bit tricky. Why? Because there's a big threat here. At some point, like, I had to calculate this, right? At first glance, it's like, okay, takes here, takes, and like, whoa. This is getting a little crazy here. But I calculated, I was like, I can actually take, oh yeah, and then rook c5 would have been even crazier, right? But resourceful move, rook c4, and we're good to go. And then another thing here, chat, instead of any of this nonsense, I could have avoided this by pushing. You take, I push. Rook a7. D2. You take, I move out of the way. Like, oh wait, sorry, not there. I have to move closer to you. Here. You can even take here, and then I promote. I could have been fine. And then you try and push, and you're just gonna lose, right? Yeah, I mean, I was just like, all right. I didn't have the courage, to be honest. Did not have the courage to do this, and I was just really hyper focused on how I can do this right here and trade everything off. But at this point now I start pushing. He pushes, and chat, the engine starts going crazy. I did not realize how dangerous this was for black. Now that the king's closer, it's more troublesome, so that's why I started going. He started trying to catch up, and yeah, at this point, I took my pawn here, and king e6. At this point, my opponent flagged. Like, he just straight up ran out of time. Look at the engine. It's a drawn game. I was 100% certain that I was winning. I was like, I have an extra pawn. Like, what are they going to do? But it's a rook in game. The rook's relatively active, and it's not as easy to convert, apparently. But fortunately, I didn't have to. My opponent flagged. Like, he was under so much pressure during the entire game. And this is the moral of the story. This is what I learned from this game, is that if you're the one with a better position and you're putting your plan in place, like, your opponent's the one that's under stress and pressure the whole time and having to find counterplay, that counts for something. Yeah, I was so surprised. I was so surprised that he actually full-blown flagged. Like, I was watching the clock, and he was just spending more and more time on every move. And I was like, okay, like, you do you, man. And, of course, when he ran out of time, that's when he said, I'm too old for this. There you have it. Hope you enjoyed. If you want to check out the next game, then go check out this video right here.